President Welsh, and we'll take questions because he's on a little tight time schedule today. So we'll just open it up to questions, if you don't mind, or President Welsh.
And more importantly, he's not the main event.
That's it. All right, Brent.
Brent Zorneman, Eastern Chronicle. So,
Howdy, Brent.
howdy. What was it about Trev Alberts that stood out from the others?
There were a number of things, Brent. I think the thing that stood out to everybody who was involved in the interviews, first of all, was his business sense. And we think that was one of the requirements that we kind of put a box for when we began the search. And he looks at things a little bit different than a lot of the other athletic directors looked at the business of college athletics and how it needs to adjust in the future. I don't think anybody knows what the right answer is yet, but he is certainly willing to explore the possibilities. And the discussion we had with him on that side impressed everybody in the interview.
Front right, Travis.
Travis Brown with the Eagle. To that point, where do you kind of start to see college athletics going, and what is it about his presentation that impressed you with his knowledge of where that was going?
Well, the first thing that impressed me was when he was the athletic director at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. He picked up some mentors from the business side, especially some of the board members who worked for Warren Buffett's company. And one in particular became kind of his mentor on the business world and how things work in the business world and how do you develop options from a business perspective to solve problems in any type of an organization. And he talked through his thought process in that regard. We all thought it was an exceptional discussion and really applicable to where college sports stands today. I don't think any of us know where it's going, but the only inexcusable thing for us right now is to do nothing to adjust to wherever it goes. Something's got to change, and we need to try and be at the front end of that change, not chasing it. And that's one of the things I really liked about Trev and his conversation. He's willing to make those hard decisions and to take the risk that may be involved in keeping us moving forward.
Front left, Mark.
Mark Passwaters with Rivals.
Howdy, Mark.
Howdy, Mr. President. You were mentioning that there is a lack of clarity in college athletics right now. But during your conversations with candidates, what were some of the things that you and members of the search committee tried to emphasize in terms of sounding them out? What were some of the key areas that you were focused on?
I think most of them were asking specific questions that wouldn't surprise anybody here. You know, what do we do about NIL? How does this affect athletic departments potentially in the future? How would you adjust to those kind of eventualities? Nothing startling in terms of the brilliance of the question askers. It was more the way he responded differently than most others in terms of his answers. And his answers were very thoughtful. They were not, it was certainly not, well, we just need to raise more money. It had everything to do with fiscal responsibility, discipline within the department, managing your budgets all the way down to team levels. There is, of course, clearly a need to develop more revenue. How do you do that without increasing costs at the same time? It was just a very thorough and complete answer to the question, and it just really made him stand out from the other candidates. Now, that wasn't the only great thing we liked about him. I believe he has a presence. I think that is important. I believe he is a very credible spokesman in the NCAA and among other Power 5 athletic directors. I think we want that here at A&M. We want someone who can speak knowledgeably and confidently and credibly about the issues. And the other thing that we really liked about him is that he is a very humble guy. He is very family-oriented. He's very team-oriented. He's talked at great length about building teams within the department, about building relationship with coaches, about helping coaches move their teams forward, analyzing success and failure and figuring out how to move on from there in a better direction. He was just very thoughtful in a number of different areas, and we were looking for a leader who was fiscally responsible and had proven it in the past, who had the business chops to look at the problems that are emerging these days from a little bit different perspective, and who was able to bring a department together and move it in a direction as a team. And he checked all those boxes for me.
Out front, Cole, and then to the left, Alex.
Cole Thompson, allaggies.com.
Howdy, Cole.
General, when you look back at the search committee, do you remember how many candidates you interviewed for the position, and did you have a certain timeline when you want to get this job finalized?
We didn't have a specific timeline. We wanted to find the right person. We were told from the beginning by the search firm that was kind of supporting us through the process that would probably take 2 to 3 months if we wanted to take our time and look at all candidates who were available. I don't know how many total candidates actually were screened by either the selection or the search committee and or the search firm, but we gave the search firm a very specific list of attributes we were looking for, and they did some screening with that. Our search committee did some additional screening, and then our search committee did the initial interviews. I believe there were 10. That number may be off by 1 or 2. I was not part of those interviews. I was able to interview 5 candidates in the next round of interviews.
To the left, Alex.
Hey, General Welsh.
Hey,
Good to
sir.
see you.
Good to see you, Alex.
You know, leadership is something that was mentioned a number of times over there. And, you know, throughout your discussions with Trev, throughout the hiring process, you know, whether when he asked you or you were talking to him about A&M's leadership, you know, what are the specific things you were telling him about how you guys have been working, especially in the last few months as you've been in your first few months as president?
Well, Alex, not just me. I mean, he was interviewing with Dave Dunlap, who has been a great leader in business, a great leader here for organizations like the 12th Man. Chris Cooper was in the interviews with him. Chris Cooper has also helped lead the charge as the chairman of the 12th Man Foundation. So he had a chance to meet people who have moved A&M forward in many, many different ways. And then we just talked about what A&M was capable of. Talked about the people who come out of this university, the people who live and work here and help prepare our students, including our student athletes, to go chase their dreams. He had a chance to visit with one of our members of the Board of Regents just to get to know a regent, so there wasn't this mystery about what a regent is versus what a trustee is at the University of Nebraska, and a chance to ask some questions about how do the Board of Regents operate, what is the decision-making process at the university. All questions that I think were really well thought out and well-founded. And I think what we saw with Trev was pretty consistent across that entire group, and that's somebody who was honest, he was straightforward, he told us why he wanted to know the answer to the question. He asked follow-on questions where it was appropriate, and when we asked him questions, we got the same honesty in return. I mean, by the end of the process, you'd have told me I was crazy if I didn't hire him.
Second row on right, David, then we'll go back behind the lights.
David Nuno, Texags. Howdy, President.
Howdy, sir.
So this may be a weird question, but did it take any convincing because of his long history with Nebraska? How did that part of the negotiations go?
You'll have to ask Trev that question. I'm sure it was hard. You know, he's got pretty deep roots at the University of Nebraska, and his DNA is probably all over the place. And so I'm sure it was a very tough decision for he and his family to make the decision to leave. I do believe him when he says he sees the opportunity here. I think we all see the opportunity here. This ought to be a place athletic directors come to die. You know, the very best ones ought to want to be at Texas A&M. And our athletic department ought to be exceptional all the time in every sport and in every way. And I think he sees that potential as well. And that's the only thing I've ever said to him. Don't limit your thinking about what can happen at Texas A&M until you come take a look at it. Come meet the people who live and work here, meet our student athletes, meet the community that supports them, and then realize that whatever you thought the limit was, just erase it and draw one much, much higher than that, because this place is capable of incredible things.
Last question back in the back. Tyler?
Yeah, President Tyler Shaw with KBTX.
Yes, sir.
Kind of going off of that, I mean, were you surprised when the committee came to you with Trev Alberts, his name? I mean, was he even someone that you thought would even be available? And how did you find out that, you know, someone that is deeply rooted in Nebraska is even available for this job?
Surprise isn't the right word for me. I was excited that he was interested. One of the things we found out throughout this search is that the job is really attractive to a whole lot of people. There were a lot of really talented people interested in coming to Texas A&M and taking on this challenge. And I think that Trev being interested was exciting to me because I knew of him. I actually have friends who spent a lot of time in Nebraska and are graduates of the University of Nebraska. I'd heard them talk about him both years ago as a player and now as athletic director, and I knew what his reputation was. And so I was excited that he was willing to even consider the possibility. And after interviewing me, I got a lot more excited because he's a pretty impressive guy.
President Welsh, thank you for your time.
Alan, thank you. Yes. And by the way, this is kind of a thrill to meet all you guys. I read your stuff all the time. So keep writing, keep telling the story. yeah. Take care.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, new athletic director at Texas A&M, Trev Alberts. And Trev, you want to start with the opening comment?
I would just like to say good afternoon and thank you again for being here and tell you just how excited that our family is to join this family. And it's a little bit surreal. It's exciting. And the more that we dive into everything about Texas A&M, the more this feels right to us. And so just again want to say how grateful and honored we are to get to be a part of this family.
And if you would, media, please identify yourself and the media outlet you represent. We'll start with Brent down front.
Brent Sorneman, Houston Chronicle. So I guess just a very simple, straightforward question. How difficult was it to leave Nebraska, considering your roots there?
Yeah, very difficult. You know, it's and emotional, frankly. And that was a difficult part of this whole transition. You know, I wasn't looking to leave, right? Been associated with that university for a long, long time. And as I said in the previous press conference, I mean, that's a place that changed my life, you know, and other than my faith in my family, most everything I have today I owe to the University of Nebraska. And so very challenging, emotional, and difficult. But, you know, at 54 years old, you see opportunities, and Texas A&M is a pretty remarkable place with a remarkable trajectory, with remarkable leadership. And so as you think about the future and you think about some of these evolving changes, much of which is yet undefined, right? We don't know where this is going. But part of what is really intriguing to me is I think this is a place under General Welsh's leadership that's going to help to define what the future looks like. And that's really exciting to me.
So I can't even say, how about that first round NCAA tournament matchup? I have to say matchups. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I will say that it appears a little too coincidental to me. No, you look, I mean, I'm really happy for Amy Williams. I'm really happy for Fred Hoiberg. Look, I spent 3 years working with them and just trying to support them. You know, those basketball programs have achieved some really significant things. I'm also really, really happy for Coach Taylor and Buzz Williams, right? And I've had a chance, as I started to look at this job, really dive in. I've watched a lot of press conferences. I've watched Coach Taylor, just really impressed. Those are 4 really outstanding human beings and 4 great teams. And so it'll be a little surreal and interesting to watch them compete. But the beauty is I can't lose. So.
Front right, Travis.
Travis Brown with the Eagle newspaper here in town. When you look at the future of college athletics and the business coach, President Welsh said that you took on some business mentors while you were at UNO. What was the kind of purpose of that? What did you learn, and who were some of those people?
Well, I had never even worked in athletic administration. I received several phone calls during my time, one in 2008 from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and ultimately I chose not to engage. But in 2009, a Board of Regent member called and asked if I would be willing to serve the university at the University of Nebraska-Omaha. And to be quite frank with you, I thought being an athletic director meant you went to games and occasionally had to hire coaches when they retired. And as RC would tell you, there's a little bit more to it than that. And so about 6 weeks on the job, I went to my boss at that point, Chancellor John Christensen, who's still a dear friend of mine. And, you know, I'm fairly competitive. I like to win. And so I asked Chancellor Christensen, I said, would you define victory for me? Because at the end of the day, I want to do what you want me to do. And he said, I need a 25-year vision for financial stability in the University of Nebraska-Omaha Athletic Department. And I'm not sure he knew what that meant. I sure didn't know what that meant. And so I went home and I told my wife, I said, I think we're in trouble. And she said, what do you mean? And I remember my wife, we had 3 young children, a dog and a bird. We lived in an apartment next to the gas station. She was not real pleased with me. And we were in Marietta, Georgia for 12 years. And so we moved back to a place. She didn't know anybody. And she said, well, what is your plan? And I said, my plan is I'm going to go ask for help. And if at the end of the day, business leadership in Omaha doesn't think University of Nebraska-Omaha Athletic Department matters, then we'll head back down to South Carolina where our house was and move on. And so ultimately what I did, and I don't really want to name names only because I'm not trying to, but the coolest thing about Omaha, Nebraska is the business leadership and philanthropy there take the meetings, no matter who you are. And these are all names you would all know. And so I went and asked for help, and ultimately a gentleman who's since passed away became my mentor. His name's Walter Scott Jr., and he's a former CEO and chairman of Kiewit and Level 3 Communications. And so he established a working group committee, and we went to work. And for 16 months, they taught me business. And my job was to stand in front of a group of people all 3 times smarter than me, all chairmen or CEOs of companies, and I had to walk through fairly, substantial cash flow statements and all those types of things, uses and sources documents, all of that, to try to find solutions to how to fix an ongoing recurring budget deficit within UNO athletics. And so ultimately, as a result of those 16 months, difficult decisions had to be made. And then I recalled back why, when he first met with me, he said, "Well, you have the courage to execute." And of course, at that point, I said, "Absolutely." And then it actually happened, which was a little different. So that was sort of the process. I owe a lot to those men and women leaders in that community who chose to help me and go through the process. So they remained friends, and that's just how I've always done it. That's how I was taught. I would always tell everybody, and I'll say it here, the university, that was not my athletic department in Nebraska. This is not my athletic department. This belongs to Aggies. And so my job is to make recommendations, to do the work, and ultimately seek and search for solutions. And I also recognize that business doesn't employ a whole lot of emotion. And so the chief challenge, right, is that athletics is all about emotion. Fans, it's emotion. And business is about data. And so they taught me a lot, and we made tough decisions, and then we made decisions that we thought, given the information we had at the time, was in the best long-term interest of the institution and ultimately our community.
With that 25-year vision, with moving from D1 to D2, how much do those things and those lessons you learned kind of apply to the House case that's coming up, to the Labor Relations Board's cases that are coming up, and how college athletics is changing now?
Well, it's going to be significant, because at the end of the day, what's happening in college athletics is we're creating a new expense category, right? So over time, we all had our aggregated revenues, and we would spread those out and fund the support of student athletes across all of our sports. And you can, I haven't seen all of the financials here, but it's likely that probably 1 or 2, maybe 3 if we're lucky, but probably 2 sports have a net operating profit. The rest of those are subsidized by football and the other sports. And so slowly over time, because we're batting 1,000 in terms of losing lawsuits in the NCAA, is more and more of the revenue that we've been using to fund athletics is going directly to student athletes. Started with cost of attendance. I mean, when I played, we didn't get cost of attendance, and then it was the 5980, right? And the Alston case, which is probably, if I had to guess here, a $3 to $4 million expense category that wasn't here previously. And so if the NRA litigation is settled, and we're modeling, and essentially what we're going to be doing is sharing some of the revenue with student athletes. You look at all the professional organizations, the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, most of them are roughly 50-50. So I think we'll get some credit for what we're doing on the back end. It won't be 50%, but if you model some of the numbers, depending on how it gets allocated, you're looking at between a $15 and $20 million number, not one time, annually. Going forward, that'll be a new expense category that athletics are going to have to deal with. And so, there's really only 2 options. There's increasing revenues or cutting costs. And that's the only 2 things that we can do going forward. So we'll have a good plan with that. I think there's some opportunities that we can look entrepreneurially and creatively to find new revenue streams. But at the end of the day, the business model of athletics is changing significantly. And it's the hardest part is, most of the folks growing up in college athletics are part of a college athletics ecosystem that is used to a certain way of doing business. And it's no different at the University of Nebraska. It's probably no different here. The ability of institutions to adapt and adjust to that change and be nimble, the quicker you're able to get there, the more reasonably the opportunity to be successful competitively in others. So change is going to happen. It's going to be hard. It won't be fun. It'll be uncomfortable. But that's the reality we live in.
Down front, left, Mark, and then second row, Olin.
Mark Passwaters with Rivals. Trev, you've said a couple of times that you think that A&M can be a leader in this changing collegiate athletic landscape. In your mind, what were some of the things that differentiated A&M from other institutions when you started taking a look at this position?
Well, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, to me, leadership is just so critical. I mean, you know, as you think about these changes, think about how hard this is going to be. Again, there will be decisions that have to be made that people are not going to like. That's just the nature of making decisions, and it'll be hard. And so that's why leadership will really matter. You know, when you're sitting down there in the trenches, who's beside you? And, you know, I worked for an admiral, Ted Carter, for 3 years, and really appreciated his leadership style. And I started looking at this job and said, wait a minute, general, a 4-star general. And then I started just, you know, reading a little bit more and watching more videos. And then as I had some interactions with General Welsh, I'm like, well, this is the real deal. And so, you know, when you go through tough times, you want to work with people that you can follow and you can trust and you can believe in. So I think first and foremost, it's leadership. But then I think if you just look at the trends of Texas A&M, not just athletics, right? We're really focused on the wins and losses of athletics, but you look at the enrollment, you look at the research dollars, look at where this institution is today. I don't know of many institutions that are on the trajectory that Texas A&M is right now. And that's pretty exciting when you think about the trustees and all of the folks that care about this place. So I think those are the types of things that matter to me, having really entrenched leadership that the campus community and the chancellor of the system believe in. I mean, that's important. We know what our role in athletics is. It's significant. It's important. But it isn't the primary reason that Texas A&M has a university. And so we'll do a good job of trying to recognize what that is and being a good partner with General Welsh and his leadership team to help uplift the brand equity of the institution. I hope that answered your question. I'm sorry. Okay.
Second row on the right, Olin, and then Alex.
Yeah, Olin Buchanan with TexAgs. Trev, a couple of things. First, can you give us some kind of take us through a little bit how this process started? Was this like a job that when you found out it was open, you pursued? Did you hear from someone else? You know, how did the ball get rolling that would bring you to Texas A&M?
Well, it's really been a whirlwind, and because I've had so many people ask me, so when was the first time I can't even hardly remember some of this. But you know, jobs like this come open. Obviously, there's search firms all across the country, and so you know, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but you know, you get phone calls about, hey, you really need to take a look at this job. This is a job that would be really good for you, your skill set. So those types of things happen, and then ultimately you have initial conversation with the search firm. That's how it generally works, and then it wasn't very long after an initial conversation with Chad when he said, you know, can you jump on a Zoom? You can imagine how hard these things are, especially like with someone with me and my alma mater, and I was very happy at Nebraska. And so, you know, we're working on a lot of really important things during my time there. And so, you know, confidentiality and those types of things are really, really important. So you first start out doing the Zoom interview with the committee and with General Welsh, and I really wanted to get through that. I wanted to see if that first interaction, I kind of believe when things just happen easy and just kind of feels right, maybe it's meant to be. My wife and I were doing a lot of praying about it, right? And because it wasn't something that was on our radar, we weren't thinking to ourselves, "Hey, let's go take another opportunity." And then after that initial Zoom with the committee, I think I was more interested than ever before, just based on my interaction with, you know, both the committee and with General Welsh.
And I wanted to ask you if there was any chance at all that you might have contacted Bill Byrne to see what you were getting into.
Well, I haven't yet, but he did. I had just had some text message interactions with him several months ago, and he was very complimentary. I've known Greg for quite a while and have communicated with him a little bit. And so after my name was announced, he reached out to me, and I'm looking forward to connecting with him. He had just gotten to Nebraska, I think in 1992. My junior year is when he came. And so he told me, he promised me he would give me the list of all the best restaurants and where to get a haircut. So I'm grateful to Bill Byrne for that.
Go to the left, second row, Alex.
Hey, Trev, Alex
Yes, sir.
Miller with the Eagle. You know, you talked a lot about leadership and General Welsh. I wanted to ask you specifically about him. You know, what were some of the things that really stood out about him and the way that he described leadership under him, and, you know, the things and just how influential and instrumental he specifically was in you feeling confident to take a job like this?
Instrumental is right, critical. You know, I look for genuine, authentic leadership. And I ask myself all the time, you know, and I'll get to this, and I'll get to your question, I'm sorry to veer off here. Just because I'm the athletic director doesn't mean I'm the athletic director, right? Just because someone places you in a position of leadership doesn't mean you're the leader. You have to earn that. You know, you have to earn the right to have people follow you. And so the more I interacted with General Welsh, I could tell he was a genuine, authentic leader, and he is who he purports to be. And that's really, really important. It's clear he's really, really intelligent, which I think is really important too. And, you know, generally when you interact with some people at that type of level, I found him to be incredibly humble, which is important to me as well. And so you combine his experience, I think to myself about, there's going to be tough days here. There's going to be things that are really hard. I don't think they're going to rattle General Welsh. He's been through a lot tougher things. He's led a lot more complex organizations than this one. So it just gives you a level of confidence when you combine his experience, his intellect, his humility, his authenticity. I suppose most of you do know this, but I don't think many people know just how fortunate Texas A&M is to have him as the president. I mean, this is a hard time. You think about, just do a little research on the number of presidents, the number of institutions that don't have presidents. It's hard to find great leadership in these spaces. And so I think this is a place that, for a lot of reasons, was able to attract him. But this is a place that has elite leadership at the highest levels. And that's critical if you want to be successful.
Trev, we'll go back behind the lights on the right side and just go down TV row.
Hi, Trev. Eric Kelly from KWKT. You talked a lot about, you know, how people in the end care about wins and losses in terms of athletics. Knowing what you know about what a winning athletic program looks like from that regard at Nebraska and Nebraska-Omaha, what do you see in the athletes and the coaches in Texas A&M that gives you confidence that that can continue under your leadership?
Well, there's a lot of winners here. There's a lot of great coaches here. I mean, that's really obvious. I mean, you go down the list of, first of all, they appear as if they're great people. Great hires have been made here. They are really, really, I didn't know Coach Elko personally, but I know of him. That's a real football coach. He knows how to build a culture. He knows how to build a tough team. I'm excited to get to work with him. And so I don't want to single out anymore, but you think about all the coaches, I think there's really, really high-level talent here. And, you know, so I think at the end of the day, and we talked about a lot of this, you know, when I was at Nebraska. I mean, you know, Nebraska fans are no different than Aggie fans, right? We want to win. And so we get so fixated all the time on winning, 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 winning. When Coach Slocum will tell you, like, at the end of the day, stop talking about winning. Let's start talking about the process that leads to the wins, right? I think it, you know, was a great coach not long ago that talked about, you know, the culture precedes the championships. I mean, winners act like winners long before they ever win, you know. So it's the things that nobody sees. It's the culture. It's the hard work. It's the unity. It's all those little things that ultimately lead to what we all want. And so we can get really fixated on wins. And I've seen successful organizations. Of course, everybody wants to win. But the real issue is, you know, do we have the fundamentals in place and the details in place that ultimately lead to those wins? And I think that'll be an area of focus. And I think you have the right coaches here who understand that. Understand culture now is more important than ever before. I mean, there's total freedom of movement with NIL. You know, you're going to want coaches that players believe in. Genuine, authentic leadership in the coaching space is going to be more critical than ever before. And I think that's what Texas A&M has, a whole group of coaches like that. And so that's exciting to get to partner with them.
Staying back behind the lights to the right side, Ben, and then Tyler, you'll wrap us up.
Ben Peck with KAGS NBC here in College Station. Trev, you were obviously at Nebraska, and curious about your vision there of the Nebraska volleyball program. I know that they have a tradition that dates back decades, but they seem to be, especially for a non-revenue sport, a program that a lot of countries around, a lot of programs around the country emulate. What do you think from the university standpoint and the athletic department standpoint has been done at Nebraska, can be done and applied to other situations to kind of allow any program on campus to kind of aspire to be that level within their respective sport?
Well, I think like anything else, programs get built based on consistency and winning, and ultimately, I mean, I was a student athlete at Nebraska when the volleyball program was a good program, but it certainly wasn't what it was now. And Coach Terry Pettit at that time was the volleyball coach, and Bill Byrne got hired and said, hey, what do you need to be great? And they went to work. He became friends with Coach Osborne, and he started taking some of the things that football was doing. And you could leave a football game for Nebraska, and if you just showed your ticket, you could get into the volleyball game for free. Well, that was a lot easier in those days because every football game started at 1 o'clock, There wasn't the television moving games around. And slowly they started building a fan base. And then Coach Pettit won a national championship. And that consistency of winning, and then John Cook has taken it to another level. So, fans love to be around winners. Donors love to support winning programs. It's a whole lot easier to raise money when programs are winning, than when they're not. And so I think it's just consistency of winning, consistency of effort. And I say this a lot too, and this is something I really believe in. I assume it's probably not a lot different here than it is at Nebraska, but you got to put teams on the court or on the field, in the pool, that represent the values of Aggies, right? Like they have to be teams that Aggie fans can identify with. And so part of that is understanding, what is it your fans want, and then deliver that to them in a way. And so, probably no different than Nebraska fans. Nebraska fans expect really hardworking teams that never, ever quit, that are teams, and just that they can be proud of. So I think there's great opportunity here. I think a lot of the programs are on an upward trajectory, and we have to do our part administratively. We got to raise the bar for ourselves as well in terms of support, and I'd look forward to doing that. And Nebraska actually did, volleyball makes money at the University of Nebraska, by the way. So it actually became, through that growth, is now a program that generates about $1 million a year of profit for the athletic department.
Last question back in the middle, Tyler.
Tyler Shaw with KBTX TV here in College Station. Trev, you've talked about the opportunity here and kind of the future, and this wasn't something that was initially on your radar. So what is it that you feel like you can accomplish here that you maybe wouldn't be able to accomplish at other places?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, it won't be anything that I'm accomplishing. This will be our team. We'll be a team in our department. Everybody has a critically important role, I just think, if you think about the future, and part of the challenge of answering that question is, I don't know exactly what the future is going to look like. But as you think about any future, when I was considering this job, and I was thinking hard, and by the way, I spent a lot of time, and a lot of time in prayer, trying to understand, and I just kept coming back to, there isn't any scenario that I can think of or imagine where this place doesn't have the opportunity, with alignment and leadership, hard work and focus, and a little discipline and accountability, that they can't be a leader. Not every institution can say that. And I want to be very careful. I'm not saying that Nebraska isn't that either. That's not what I'm inferring or implying. But to answer your question, what I'm saying is, based on where some of this could and very likely may go, not every institution can say that. And so I think you have to look in the broader picture. Again, I don't think people understand how important momentum on campus, enrollment growth, research expenditure, those types of things. While it may not seem like it impacts athletics, it does. Because part of that momentum and that success cascades down into departments like ours. And so that gives us a chance. So that's what I think differentiates Texas A&M. I think they have a fan base that is remarkable. that's committed. I think the 12th Man Foundation is a difference maker. Not every institution has that. So the commitment of our trustees, our donors, the fan base, and the trajectory of the institution with leadership, I don't see anything that there's no excuse, I guess is the easiest way to put it.
Trev, thank you for your time. Thank you for your family coming down and making Aggie Land your home. Thanks so much.